And we
Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host with the toast, Right Toast, here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. Just kidding. Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 comes out as of recording this 4 days from now. As of release, 2 days from now. It comes out on Thursday. We don't know when exactly on Thursday. I'm hoping early in the day, like midnight Wednesday would be perfect. So I can just stream it first thing in the morning Thursday, rush out a video, and get it out on Friday. But there's a chance that it comes out, if it comes out at like 10 p.m. Eastern Standard on Thursday, and then like it's a 4 to 6 hour game, realistically, I don't think I'm going to be doing a video on it that week. It'll come out next week. Regardless, I'm excited for it. I think Chapter 3, rightfully so, gave a lot of people a lot of faith in Poppy Playtime. And I've been a fan of Poppy Playtime since Chapter 1. I want to make that clear. I've had criticisms with the series. I think there are definitely things they could have done better. But when Chapter 3 came out, I was like, oh, shit, they locked the fuck in. So seeing all the stuff that's come out for Chapter 4 has been incredibly exciting, especially the gameplay trailer, which just came out not a day ago, 2 days ago, and it looks amazing. I just kind of wanted to take today's podcast and talk all about what we know about Chapter 4, what we know about Poppy Playtime so far, some of my theories going into the game, make some kind of predictions, and then we'll see if I'm right or wrong, because we will be streaming it on this channel. It's a new game, so that's a main channel stream for sure. As far as when we'll stream it, I don't know. Because like I said, I don't know when the game's coming out. A lot of people are scheduling their streams for sometime midday, which is a safe bet. I really hope it comes out in the morning. And if it comes out early, like really early in the morning, like midnight Wednesday or some shit like that, then I'll probably start streaming it around 9 or 10 o'clock. But we'll see. I really don't know. As far as things I wanted to talk about today, it's all Chapter 4 stuff, right? Like, it's what we saw in the gameplay trailer, what we've seen in the teasers, what we've seen in the ARG, and what I think is going to be happening. First of all, the monster designs go crazy so far. Catnap was a really good design because he was not, like, actively scary, but he was really intimidating, and he gave you that sense of dread, which is where his design really peaked for me, right? The idea that, like, I look at Catnap and I'm not like, Jesus Christ, but if I, like, turn a corner, everyone talks about it, it's one of the most effective scares in the game. When you're in the PT-inspired section in the basement of the orphanage, like the actual, like, house area, when you're in the hallucination and you enter a room, you look at this, like, radio, and then you turn around, and he was just looking at you from the door frame and backs away. No jump scare noise, no in your face, just the corner of your vision. That is when Catnap is most effective. And they do that a lot, which I really enjoy. Monster Catnap is like, oh, it's kind of gross, whatever. Miss Delight, super effective design. Loved her design. I think she's really creepy in a very good way. She was probably the most actively scary character of the chapter. And the fact that she was a complete surprise, awesome. And, you know, Posture made a whole video about how Dog Days scene is just wonderful in writing and horror. So I don't even have to talk about the smiling critters, realistically. But then we go to Chapter 4. What do we have so far? So the first creatures we were introduced to were the Nightmare Critters, which were the, like, garbage Pale Kid equivalent to the Poppy Playtime universe. The idea of, like, taking these cute characters and making the, like, the bad versions of them, which is, like, something toy companies did. It makes perfect sense. There was a lot of hate for the Nightmare Critters when they were announced. I think a lot of it was forced. Don't get me wrong, you're allowed to just not like a design very much, but I think the people who loved the Smiling Critters but absolutely hated the Nightmare Critters, I don't see your logic. It's this, like, it is the same thing, but, like, what toy companies did. The idea of, like, doing a Cabbage Patch and then doing a Garbage Pail. Like, that makes a total sense for a toy company to do. And the designs are similar enough that like I don't see how you can love one of them and despise the other. I think you're just hating to be cool at that point. Regardless, Nightmare Critters seem fun, a fun way to continue that mechanic, because I think it is a good mechanic and worth exploring. What we saw in the gameplay trailer, they might be more aggressive, like you might have to get rid of them rather than just like scare them away, which we'll see how that plays out. Something that hasn't been mentioned, but is kind of a carryover from Project Playtime, is the mini Huggies. In that shot, it's very hard to see, but there's a couple like crawling small Huggy Wuggies. That seems super interesting. I wonder where that's going to come into play, if Huggy Wuggy's back. Because in Project Playtime, Huggy Wuggy's ability was he would place these small Huggy Wuggies who would kind of monitor areas and alert if a player came too close. So I wonder if something like that is going to be happening, as I always do when I mention Project Playtime. Mob Entertainment, if you are watching this, I need you to fix Project Playtime's matchmaking and party system so I can play your goddamn video game again. It was really fun. How dare you make a really fun game and then make it unplayable and abandon it? You have the resources. Fix it. Anyway, next, I'm trying to think of the next character sequentially that was revealed, and I think it was Yarnaby. Because people for a second thought Nightmare Critters was going to be the main antagonist, which is crazy. That was part of that like weird hate wave for the Nightmare Critters, where like anytime they were shown, it was like, oh, I guess Mob Entertainment just gave up and ran out of ideas, and the main antagonist is just going to be the Nightmare Critters because they sell well. It's like, guys, the game is coming out in like 4 months. Chill. And lo and behold, we get the Yarnaby trailer, and then all the icons would change to Yarnaby. And I think Yarnaby is probably going to be the main antagonist. Really fun design. I was skeptical on a small main antagonist, just because, it's just inherently a little less frightening. But the gameplay trailer assuaged me, because in the reveal trailer, Yarnaby looks kind of small, like a little weasel guy who would just get up in your face and like eat you or whatever. But we see in the gameplay trailer, Yarnaby's bigger than us. Yarnaby is massive, so I guess that's fine. Also, Yarnaby, great name. I'm so glad I don't have to say like Mommy Longlegs or something like that this chapter. But recently we got like 3 villain reveals within the past like month, right? We got the trailer where Harley Sawyer makes an appearance as this like TV computer monitor eyeball thing. And for those of you, we'll go into the lore after we get, I gotta start with the hype because I'm hype. We'll get into the lore deeper later, but for those of you who have not been following up with Poppy Playtime, Dr. Harley Sawyer was like the main guy behind the Bigger Bodies initiative, which was the experiments that made these toys. At least he was the main guy by the time it was bad. There's a chance that Elliot Ludwig, the CEO, was involved. We're not sure. It seems unlikely because he seems like a genuinely good dude. And we know he died at some point, so maybe that has to do with it. It's a lot of uncertainty right now with what we know. But Dr. Harley Sawyer can pretty much be attributed like, oh, he's the cruel guy behind the majority of these experiments. And apparently he's still around. I wouldn't say alive. I think what likely happened is we know the Bigger Bodies initiative is in some way inputting consciousness and living into these toys. What probably happened is Dr. Harley Sawyer did some kind of thing like that to the computer systems of the Playtime Co. facility, because it seems like he has this domain over these like computer people and like the server room and stuff like that. We also got some snippets of Pianosaurus, who got his own like YouTube short advertisement, and then he appears briefly in a chase sequence in the gameplay trailer, to which he's fast as fuck. Holy, he's going to be chasing. But honestly, a raptor with the face of a piano sounds awesome. I can imagine the horror sequences of like, it's dark as hell and you have to listen for piano to like know when to start hiding. That's awesome. I hope they do something like that. Kind of like what I hoped they did for, I can't think of his name. The bunny. with the symbols in chapter 2. Whatever his name was. Kind of like I wished they did for him. So we'll see. You know, I don't know. Then we get Doughy the Dough Man. Now, this was in the gameplay trailer, and I was not sold at first. Where it's this, like, Play-Doh can melt and reform goopy kind of dude. And he seems to be on our side. Because he falls down, and he's, like, calls his pal, and then he, like, drops the smile a bit and goes, like, follow me, or whatever. He's got this, like, Patrick Star voice. And I'm interested in him. Obviously not scary, but could be scary. Like, that's a character whose properties could allow them to become scary. The idea of, like, you know, he can kind of morph into anything, and he can seep through, like, grates and stuff. So that could definitely become scary, which I think is the strongest... I think one of the biggest strengths of Poppy Playtime so far is none of their designs seem so over the top that they couldn't be a toy, yet still be scary. And that's a really good strength Poppy Playtime has. Because a lot of people who complain about, like, the horror factor of Poppy Playtime are like, I'd fix it by making a disgusting monster that chases you and, like, rips you into pieces. Like, okay, but would that be a good toy? Because, like, these are toys. We have to remember that. So I think they've struck a good balance on make them really big and give them teeth, right? Like, which is essentially, for a lot of them, what you do. And like Doughy the Dough Man, I look at him, that's a toy for sure. Will he be an antagonist? I don't know. I don't trust him right now, I will say. Because, like, he says this, like, he appears, he calls his pal immediately and says to follow him. I'm going to be on edge. I'm going to be like, why do you want me to follow you? Not to mention the mural in the gameplay trailer has Safe Haven written on it, and all these, like, frowning faces with his arms surrounding them. So it's like, okay, is it a safe haven? Or is this your, like, little sycophant fantasy realm where you get to be in control instead of Harley? But to be fair, I think it's his voice that's telling us that Harley Sawyer and the prototype are working together and they're still doing experiments. But I do have one problem with that. The prototype. The prototype is accused of working with Harley Sawyer, the doctor. I don't believe it. Like, immediately, I'm skeptical. For a few reasons. One, their motives do seem a bit at odds, where anytime we destroy one of the main antagonists, the prototype, like, collects it for himself. Meanwhile, Dr. Harley Sawyer seemingly has set all this up himself. He wants those guards in place. So already seems a little strange. Second, the only time we've heard from the prototype directly was it taunting Dr. Harley Sawyer about how much it wants to kill him, essentially, right? So the idea that this prototype went from wanting to kill everybody, including Dr. Harley Sawyer, to actively working with him, I find to be skeptical. Ways that I think they could do it, and this is kind of going to start turning into the lore side of things, it could be a matter of they both are trying to double-cross each other. So I still think the main plot of this game is that Poppy is trying to get us to free all the toys, and Dr. Harley Sawyer is trying to make a body for himself to leave the facility. I think Dr. Harley Sawyer, for some reason, almost died and transferred his consciousness into... at the time, I thought the prototype, but now I guess it's two separate entities, so into the servers. I think Dr. Harley Sawyer wants to do the experiment in reverse. I think he wants to, instead of putting a consciousness into a toy, put his own, like, consciousness into a human. Which is why I think he's letting us get down here. Because my whole thinking so far was the prototype seems to be along for the ride. It's been with us since Chapter 2, and anytime we defeat something, it suddenly appears and takes it. So, like, it's nearby. So all of this was having me think, like, okay, the prototype is getting us down to the lab so it can try to take our body and leave. But now we have Dr. Harley Sawyer literally still alive, making this complicated. So I think Harley and the prototype are probably both planning to double cross each other. I think that's the way my brain understands this right now. If they actually are working together, Sawyer probably just wants to use the prototype like any other toy in order to achieve his goal of becoming human and leaving the prototype and the rest of it behind. The prototype probably wants to do the same thing. I wouldn't doubt if the prototype, like if Dr. Harley Sawyer approaches the prototype and is like, hey, I want to be human and I can make you human too, wink. And essentially the prototype, knowing that the doctor is a detestable human being, is probably going to go back on his word, but will go along with it to get there. So at the final step, the prototype can betray the doctor and become the human. I think that's the only way this makes sense in my brain. Either that or the prototype has changed drastically since the time period where we have all the information about it. But I don't know. I guess we'll find out later in the chapter, or later in the franchise. Because I will say, I don't think Chapter 4 is the last chapter of Poppy Playtime. I don't know if a lot of people have been saying this. It feels more like not a calm before the storm. The fact that it's called Safe Haven is interesting. Is it truly a safe haven, or is that what Doey says it is? Right? Because it seems like we're going to have a One Piece situation. For my One Piece fans out there, I don't know if you've ever watched, if you haven't watched it, there's a prison arc called Impelled Down. And about halfway through that arc, when they're in there at their lowest point, they're about to die. They get rescued by some mysterious figure. And when they wake up, they find out that there is a secret area built into by the prisoners and hidden within this prison where, since people in this prison get killed all the time, these people were sneaking into and staying there forever. And then jailers would just be like, oh, they went missing, guess they died, and move on. And it was this like secret area in the prison where you could just chill. It was like a bar. It was super like friendly. It was a great time. I'm wondering if the safe haven that Chapter 4 is talking about is something like that, where Doey actually did make a safe area for toys to wait around in until better days can come. Or if not, and the safe haven is the experiment chamber, right? Especially because, like, it's still, even if they have an area where they're safe from Sawyer and the prototype, they still need to eat. That was still one of the big things, is they need to eat. And they need to eat meat. So, like, is this safe haven, like, choosing the oldest one to sacrifice so the others can eat? Did they find a whole stash of bodies that haven't been eaten yet? It's hard to tell. Speaking of bodies, Chapter 4 seems to really crank up the mature tones of this series, which I'm thankful for, in the sense that, like, I don't think horror games need to be overtly graphic or mature to be taken seriously, but it is really annoying to hear people say that all the time, especially about Poppy Playtime, which I think is a pretty intense game, especially by Chapter 3. But now that Chapter 4 is like, first of all, Poppy says hell in the trailer, which is crazy. Because, like, yes, hell is a pretty, like, minor curse, but, like, the fact that any curse word at all is being said is a step up. You know, it's a nice, like, change of pace. But even more than that, there are dead bodies. Like, dead human bodies throughout this trailer. We have to do the, like, AAA loading screen where you sidle through two tight spaces, but it's a bunch of dead human bodies. One of the pickups, like one of the grab pack pickups, we get off of somebody's dead body. So, like, this is getting to be a bit more mature, which is refreshing to see. We can now officially say Poppy Playtime is more graphic than Five Nights at Freddy's, although with how much blood has been in this franchise, that was always kind of the case. Because, like, look, I love FNAF. FNAF is really tame, you know, and that's fine. But yeah, Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 really seems to be turning up these mature tones in the games, which is always nice, because it is also another thing of, like, it's ammunition for us, like fans of the series to be like, look, it's not a little kids game. Look at this game. This is not made for little kids, you know? Little kids are still going to play it because kids love horror, you know, like that's just a fact, but it's not aimed at little kids. But speaking of this chapter and why I don't think it's the end yet, it's not the right vibes. The fact that it's a safe haven, going back to this tangent, right? The fact that it's a safe haven, if it really is, then this is probably the calm before the storm, where we rest a bit, we recuperate, we gear up, and we go to face the final challenge. And that's probably, if it is a real safe haven, what the end of this chapter is going to be, which does lean into it being a 5-chapter game. I've been pretty set on it being a 6-chapter game, but it seems like it'll probably be a 5-chapter game if that's what this chapter really is. But that being said, if it's not the final chapter, then who is the main antagonist going to be? Like I said, it's probably Yarnaby, but it's interesting that Sawyer and the prototype are being set up in a way to be these final antagonists, whether of this chapter or the next. It might just be the matter of they're done hiding now, and they could be the main antagonist overall, so their presence is being more known in Chapter 4. But, I don't think we're defeating Sawyer or the prototype this chapter. I think that'd be much too soon. So then it comes down to, is it Yarnaby? Which does make sense. I think Yarnaby is the most logical candidate. But I think Doughy is a good candidate, too. Only because, all we know of him is he says, "Hiya, pal, follow me." And, in the Safe Haven mural, he's hugging a bunch of frowning faces. So it's a matter of, is this truly an altruistic character protecting the toys? Or are they deluded? Which we'll find out, you know? I mean, Miss Delight, in a way, was similar, where, you look at Miss Delight and she was always talking about the children and how she wants to protect the children. And even in the tape, she was talking to Catnap and she was like, are the children safe? And it was like, yes. Can I see them? No. And then she has that moment to herself and Barb where she's like, probably because he knew I'd kill them all. So, clearly, some of these toys are not altruistic, but are willing to put up that facade to get a good opportunity. Which, is that what Doughy is doing? Is going to be the big question. Other things of importance to mention going into it. I guess what I'll do a very quick, in case you haven't played Poppy Playtime and haven't paid attention to it, what the hell is going on? Well, essentially, there was a toy factory. I'm not going to go all the way from the beginning. We are a former employee at this factory, and we got a letter that there were people still alive, and we came back to investigate. We instead found Poppy, who informs us that the toys are still alive and they're stuck and starving, and we need to go down and fix this. So we keep going down and down and down to fix this. That's the main plot. If you want the actual story, I think we can start transitioning to questions, because one of them is great, and I want to bring it up right now. So if you have any questions you want answered on the podcast, feel free to send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. You can copy that. That's in the description to copy and paste, because it's a pain to type out. Our first question comes from Potato God, and I think this is a great question for this time of year, right before big release. Potato God, him, says, I don't know much about Poppy Playtime, and I want to catch up. I'm thinking of watching 2 Let's Plays, and then watching theories and the ARG. Is this a good way to catch up? Or do you think for me and anyone else out there, how to catch up on an indie horror game? I think that's a great way to do it. They are fun games, so I recommend just buying and playing them. But if that's not in your means, or you don't want to play it, you just want to know what's going on, I generally think that is the best way to catch up on these lore-dense, ARG speculative indie horror games, where you watch a Let's Play so you know what the gameplay is, then you start watching theories and speculation videos. I would never start with a theory or speculation video. If you want a place to watch the Let's Plays of it, I don't know who to recommend. You can watch my playthrough of Chapter 3. I did that live on this channel. But Chapter 1 and 2, I don't know if I have a good live stream of them, because I think they came out before I was really doing a lot of this. I don't remember, to be honest. Did I play them live on the channel? Maybe I did. I don't know. Anyway, but as far as theories go, to catch up, if you want like an overview of the story, not to again toot my own horn, but in my last Yarnaby video, I did like a mini timeline in there with the updated information we have. So that's good to use. Other channels I'd recommend, Sheep's Rampage does incredible work keeping up with the ARG and the lore in general. I would definitely check him out. I mean, Game Theory has some good videos in the lore too, but I think you have the right idea of like play the game or watch a Let's Play first and then start watching those lore videos. And again, I have a whole timeline in my Yarnaby video, and I'll put a card too right here. But thank you for your question, Potato God. It's perfect timing to ask a question like that with Chapter 4 only days away. Our next question comes from Kira, she, her. Yeah, all the questions are about Poppy Playtime, by the way. Not sure about solid evidence for this, but Elliot Ludwig seems to care a lot about orphans. What if, instead of general profit motives, this entire operation really is in his mind to take care of the orphans? No one was adopting them as children, so he made them into toys, each carefully matched with their personality so they could be themselves, so they could have a home and family and love, and possibly be resistant to disease and death like his own adopted child, if she's in Poppy. He just didn't account for the fickleness of children and how they would get bored of their toys. The more profit-central themes would come after he's gone. I see the logic here. The idea of Elliot Ludwig starting this initiative with good intentions, a way to keep these children alive and happy forever, even in terrible circumstances. But I will say, I don't think that's true for a couple reasons. One, the children were being adopted. As far as we're aware, we only have a couple tapes, but we know that the one tape we have, family loved this one kid, wanted to adopt this one kid. We're filling out the paperwork to adopt this one kid, and then as they're doing it, the person helping them is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, something's come up. We'll have to reconvene." And it was something like that, where like suddenly they weren't able to adopt that child anymore, and the implication was that child was recently selected or finished in an experiment to become a bigger body. That child was no more. So like, the children were being adopted, it seems, and if anything, these experiments were impeding on their adoption process. But more than that, I don't know. I do think Elliot Ludwig probably initially started the experiments to save his daughter, right? The idea of like using poppy flower extract to keep a rat alive, meanwhile his daughter is dying or dead at this point. It does seem like it started for that kind of an altruistic reason, but I don't think, unless there's stuff about Elliot Ludwig we are yet to learn, I don't think he started the Bigger Bodies initiative. Well, I mean, first of all, we know that the BBI was Dr. Sawyer's idea. The big question comes into, and this is part of the ARG, I forget the name of the program, was when Elliot Ludwig was still CEO, there was like a Young Geniuses program where he was like sending out stuff to like, if you're a smart kid, come to the factory. And Elliot Ludwig was one of those kids. And we get this note about like betrayal, which is seemingly from Elliot. Like, how could he do this? And there was this like fire at a theater we don't know much about yet. And then much later, when they're trying to fix the factory and like increase profits and all that, they have this list where they get a detective to find like who was involved in that, and Dr. Harley Sawyer was specified and picked out, and like, this is a great candidate, let's get him in. So like, Elliot Ludwig is such a question mark right now, where like it does seem like there was something going on where he needed people who were smart, but there was some kind of selfish notion there. So I wonder if he was trying to find a way to prevent death or reverse death, and that's part of what the Young Geniuses program was. And then after Elliot dies, that just leads the doors open to do the Bigger Bodies initiative. That's unclear, but it seems like something like that is probably what's going on here. But yeah, I wouldn't say that Elliot Ludwig was putting kids into the toys, or at least doing that to like give them a forever home. But I do think it was his research that began the process of the Bigger Bodies Initiative. That's my thoughts right now, anyway. But like I will say, Kira, your theory, plausible, totally possible. I just don't think it's true. That's my opinion on that. But thank you for your question. Our next one comes from Emmy Chu, she, her. I saw a theory about Ollie being the security system of the factory, which had been mentioned through a green VHS tape from Chapter 1 that I first saw from Cut Cafe on YouTube. What are your thoughts on this theory versus the theory that Ollie is the prototype? Thank you for your question. I will say the state-of-the-art security system in Chapter 1, I think, was referring to Huggy, because Huggy Wuggy's stated purpose was security. So I think the state-of-the-art security system was Huggy Wuggy. Regardless, there is still like CCTV footage. We know this. We see this in the chapter in the Yarnaby teaser that we're seeing the perspective from security cameras. So I think that being Ollie is possible, but I would think if anyone is in control of the CCTV security of this facility, it's Harley Sawyer. I think that makes a lot of sense because he's already seemingly in the computer system in a way. That being said, I don't think Ollie is the prototype. I know that's a pretty popular theory, and it's completely possible, because, like, the prototype can mimic voices. So, like, he just had to find a kid, and now he can have a kid's voice. The mimic... I hope I didn't say mimic instead of prototype. They're different characters. It's funny that both FNAF and Poppy Playtime went this direction around the same time. It's kind of funny. And I will say, I've seen a lot of people be like, oh my god, Poppy Playtime's copying FNAF. Ain't no way. Poppy Playtime very clearly had been planning the prototype since the beginning. And looking at FNAF and the way like security breach and all that is going, the mimic was planned since, I would argue, Help Wanted. So like, I think both companies just happened to be making similar games at the same time. You know, it's that idea of horror in general in the public being an echo of the fears of the time it released, right? Like a lot of space horror happened back when there was fears of isolation and things like that. A lot of zombie horror happened when cell phones boomed and people were worried about being like a zombie to their phone. Right now there's a lot of like birth related horror. Gee, I wonder why. And especially in the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of technology impersonating people horror. Go figure with generative AI, right? I think it's just Scott and Steelwold and Mob Entertainment both making horror based on that, like, not whether on purpose or not, but like leaning into that public conscious fear of technology mimicking humans. So I think it's just pure coincidence. Regardless, I don't think the prototype is copying Ollie. I really don't, or I don't think Ollie is the prototype. I don't think that makes sense because the prototype is already like traveling with us. To go over the top and also have this like helpful voice, I don't think makes a lot of sense, especially hearing in Chapter 4 where Ollie's like actively giving us callouts, where it's like he's outside, he's over here, and things like that. That being said, who is Ollie? Because it's someone who has keys for the facility, someone who can watch us and talk to us, you know? So like Ollie is in this somehow. I'm still of the belief that Ollie, when we find him, is literally going to be a toy phone. Just like a toy phone who managed to hook himself up to the actual like intercom system of the facility to help someone out. I legitimately think Ollie is just a toy phone somewhere. But I think what you said technically, again, with like same with Kira, both of these are possible. I don't think either of them are like, no way. Just me personally, I don't think that's true. But thank you for your question. And finally, we have a question from Iris, she, her. Isn't it weird how everyone we've killed in Poppy Playtime so far has been a guard of some sort, able to keep people out and toys in? Do you think that Huggy, Mommy, Catnap, and the prototype are actually trying to keep the toys contained, and Poppy is trying to release them into the world, manipulating us about her motives, of course? Before he came along, they didn't escape, and now they're running out of food. Yeah, 100%. I fully think the ending of this game is going to come down to what the player having to decide what is more morally justifiable. Destroying everything and burning it all to the ground, and killing all the toys in the process, or releasing them into the public? And that's a question that I don't think there's a right answer to. But I would, honestly, if that's the options we get, listen to Poppy and release everybody, or listen to the prototype and kill everybody, I think it's high time they get to be put out of their misery. No one's happy here. They haven't been happy for 50 years. And they're not going to be happy out there. It actually, it leans on, I like to write monologues, and I like to write monologues and perform them on like Twitter and Blue Sky and stuff. I not on Twitter anymore because the whole AI thing where like anything you post on Twitter will just immediately be fed into Grok or whatever. But I still post them on Blue Sky and on SoundCloud and stuff. But one of them I made a long one, and it was a kind of in this, and this is just going into fan fiction territory, but it was in this vein of like imagining a final scenario where Poppy's held back by something, the prototype is held back by something, and you have the lever, like the release or kill lever in front of you. And it's the prototype begging the player to end everything and kill us all. And I really like what I wrote for that monologue and how I performed it. So I'm going to link it here. If you want to go listen to it, it's over there. It's on my like Comic Dubs channel. But I think that's where this game is headed. And maybe that's the double cross that's actually happening. Dr. Harley Sawyer is planning to betray the prototype to become human again. The prototype is planning to betray Dr. Harley Sawyer to kill everyone, and Poppy is planning to betray us to release all the toys. I think all three of these people are going to betray us. So we'll have to see. I think that'll be chapter 5 or 6 material, but I think that's where this game is headed. I think that makes the most sense. But thank you for your question, Iris. And this is kind of a shorter podcast, but I didn't have as much to add unless I just started doing a Poppy timeline, and I don't want to do one right now. Just like I said, if you want my thoughts on what the full timeline for Poppy Playtime is, that video is my last Yarnaby one, which is linked right here. But until next time, if you want your questions answered on the podcast, feel free to send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. That's in the description to copy and paste because it's a pain to type out. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.